Okay, so looking to break through limitations and hit a whole new level, we dove into a sermon by Apostle Joshua Selman.
Oh, yeah.
And let me tell you, it is packed with powerful insights.
Oh, wow.
We're talking about a YouTube video from the channel Koinonia Watch TV
Okay.
titled The Price You Must Pay to Break Stagnancy and Enter New Dimensions. Think of this as a guide,
Yeah.
a roadmap to help you overcome those hurdles, whether they're in your personal life, your career, your spiritual journey, or anything else you're striving for.
What I find so compelling about Selman's approach is he uses these biblical figures not just as stories, but as real-life examples of how spiritual principles work. He connects these ancient stories to modern challenges and shows us how these experiences offer timeless lessons.
It's like he's saying, hey, look, these people went through similar struggles and triumphs, and their journeys can teach us a lot about how to navigate our own lives.
Exactly.
And one of the biggest takeaways I got from this sermon was the power of asking why. Selman really emphasizes this point through the story of Gideon, the biblical judge who led the Israelites to victory.
Right. Most people remember Gideon for his military prowess,
Yeah.
but Selman dives deeper, focusing on Gideon's inquisitive nature.
Right.
He wasn't just a fighter, he was a thinker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When Gideon saw that the miracles, which once protected his people, had stopped, he didn't just shrug and accept it.
Right.
He stopped and asked, why? Why were we experiencing those miracles before, and why have they stopped now? It's about understanding the root cause,
Right.
the underlying reason behind why things happen the way they do.
And that's a crucial step, isn't it? Because without understanding the why, we're just reacting to circumstances instead of proactively shaping our reality. It makes me wonder, have you ever experienced a period in your life where things were going great, maybe you were hitting goals left and right, and then suddenly it felt like you hit a wall? Did you ever stop and ask yourself, why that shift happened?
Oh, it's so easy to get caught up in the emotions of those situations, whether it's the excitement of success or the frustration of a setback,
Right.
and miss those crucial insights.
Yeah.
But that's where the real learning happens. And speaking of learning, Selman outlines two major tests we all face when we're striving for advancement, and I found these really thought-provoking.
Yes, and it's important to remember that these tests aren't some sort of divine exam we have to pass to earn God's favor. It's more about developing qualities within ourselves that allow us to break free from those limitations holding us back.
Right.
The first test is courage.
And Selman is very clear on what real courage is. He explained that it's not about someone giving you a motivational speech or feeling brave because you've got a whole team backing you up. True courage comes from within. It's about a deep conviction in your heart. He illustrates this concept with a powerful anecdote from the book of Judges, where Gideon initially calls for an army to fight the Midianites, and 32,000 men respond to his call.
That's a massive army. You'd think Gideon would feel pretty confident with those numbers. But then things take an interesting turn.
Right, God tells Gideon, that's too many. Anyone who is afraid, let them go back home. You can imagine the scene, 22,000 people literally turning around and leaving. Talk about a test of courage, right?
Absolutely. To see your forces dwindle like that could easily shake your confidence. But what's interesting is that those who remained, those 10,000 who chose to stay despite their fear, they were the ones who demonstrated true courage.
Right.
They weren't relying on numbers or outward displays of strength. Their courage came from a deeper place.
And this is where Selman brings in the importance of Scripture as a source of courage. He references verses from Deuteronomy chapters 20 and 31, where God repeatedly assures the Israelites, do not be afraid, for I am with you. It's like having that inner voice reminding you that you're not alone in your struggles.
It's about tapping into a power that's bigger than ourselves, a source of strength that can help us face our fears.
Yeah.
This makes me think about those times in your own life when you had to make a really tough decision, one that maybe wasn't popular or came with a lot of risk.
Right.
Those moments took courage.
Yeah.
What was your Goliath? That challenge you had to face head on, knowing it wouldn't be easy.
We all have those Goliath moments, those times when fear wants to paralyze us, but choosing to act in spite of that fear, that's how we build that courage muscle.
Now, the second test Selman talks about is resisting complacency. And I have to say, I love his analogy of the water here. He describes how Gideon further narrowed down his army, not through strength or skill, but by observing how the men drank from a river.
Right. Some of the men lapped up the water quickly like a dog,
Yeah.
while others knelt down to drink leisurely. It seems like such a small detail. But Selman connects this to a much larger point about the dangers of early success.
It's like those who knelt down, they were comfortable, maybe even a little bit too relaxed. They let their guard down, and ultimately they were the ones sent home. The 300 who remained the ones who quickly lapped up the water, they were alert. They were focused and ready to move.
And what's fascinating here is how Selman ties this back to the need to stay hungry even when things are going wrong.
It's about recognizing that achieving a goal is just one step on a much longer journey.
You know, it reminds me of that feeling you get after you finally reach a milestone you've been working towards.
Yeah.
There's that initial rush of excitement, but then sometimes that feeling starts to fade. Have you ever experienced that sense of accomplishment turning into a lull, almost like you've lost that initial drive?
Yeah.
How do you stay motivated even when you've tasted victory?
That's the real challenge, isn't it? Avoiding that complacency trap. It's about recognizing that achieving a goal doesn't mean we've arrived at our final destination.
Right.
It's simply a marker along the path of continuous growth.
Hmm.
And Selman really walks the talk here. He shares a very personal detail about how he prays to God to never let him see the full extent of his impact.
Wow, that's a powerful statement. It speaks to a level of humility and self-awareness that's really inspiring.
It is, and I think it gets at the heart of what Selman's trying to convey about resisting complacency. It's about staying humble, recognizing that there's always more to learn, even when you've achieved a significant level of success. It's about focusing on the journey, not just the destination.
And it makes me think about the whole celebrity mindset.
Ah,
It's so easy to get caught up in external validation and the applause and recognition. But Selman's message is a powerful reminder that true advancement comes from within, from a constant pursuit of growth and learning.
and that applies to every area of life, whether it's your spiritual journey, your career, your relationships, or your personal development. It's about cultivating that hunger to learn, to grow, and to constantly evolve.
And I think that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore how Selman connects these individual tests of courage and resisting complacency to a bigger picture of understanding why things happen in our lives, the successes and the failures.
So we've been talking about these two powerful tests, the courage to step out and resist complacency even when things are going well.
And it's fascinating how Selman ties those individual tests back to that initial question of why. Remember how we talked about Gideon questioning why the miracles had stopped?
Yeah.
Selman takes that a step further and says, celebrating success without thoroughly understanding the dynamics around it, you are only implicating yourself for casualty.
That's a powerful statement. It's like he's saying, don't just ride the wave of success without understanding the currents that brought you there.
Right.
You might get lucky once or twice, but without that deep understanding, you're setting yourself up for a future downfall.
It's like building a house on a foundation you haven't inspected.
Yeah.
Sure, you might have a beautiful structure on the surface,
Right.
but if that foundation is weak, the whole thing could come crumbling down. Selman uses the example of students defending their thesis. It's not enough to just have the research and the findings you have to be able to explain and justify your process to demonstrate that you truly understand the why behind your results.
And that's where true mastery lies, isn't it? Not just achieving something once, but being able to replicate it, to understand the underlying principles so well that you can teach others to do the same. It's not about luck. It's about a deep understanding of how things work.
Selman actually applies this principle to his own ministry work, saying, in my opinion, one of the most powerful of all the dominion instructions given to man more than being fruitful is to replenish.
Now, that's an interesting concept. He's talking about the idea that true success isn't just about having a one-time hit like a single successful product launch or a viral moment.
Right.
It's about the ability to consistently create value, to replenish the world with our gifts and talents,
Yeah.
to keep that momentum going.
And what I found really interesting was how Selman connected this to the difference between the Old and New Testament perspectives on God's laws. He pointed out how in the Old Testament, the focus was often on following rules and rituals, on external actions.
But then Jesus comes along and introduces a new law, one that's based on principles rather than just outward actions.
Right.
It's about understanding the deeper meaning behind the rules, the heart of the matter.
And that law, as Selman explains it, is perfectly encapsulated in Matthew 7:8. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened.
That verse, in a way, brings us full circle to the power of asking why. It's not just about understanding our past or analyzing our successes and failures. It's about unlocking future possibilities. It's about proactively seeking knowledge, searching for answers, and knocking on those doors of opportunity.
And that requires a certain level of initiative,
Yes.
a willingness to challenge the status quo. Selman talks about how many people just accept things as they are, coming up with superstitious explanations or settling for superficial answers.
But breaking through stagnation requires more than that. It requires us to question, to probe, to dig deeper until we find the real answers that can move us forward.
Selman even shares that he's constantly asking questions, seeking guidance from God, from mentors, from people he admires. It's this constant thirst for knowledge that keeps him growing and evolving.
That's inspiring, and it makes me think about how we can cultivate that same thirst for knowledge in our own lives. Are there areas where we've become complacent, accepting things without questioning? How can we challenge ourselves to dig deeper and seek out those deeper understandings?
And this pursuit of understanding, it's not just about avoiding failure.
Right.
It's about achieving sustainable success. That kind of success that's built on a solid foundation of knowledge and wisdom.
Exactly. It's like building that house with a strong foundation, one that can weather any storm and support continuous growth. Selman actually shares a personal story that really illustrates this point. He talks about how God spoke to him about moving his ministry from Zaria to Abuja, a move that at the time filled him with fear and uncertainty.
It's interesting how even someone like Selman, who's clearly operating at such a high level, still experiences those moments of doubt and fear.
It shows that we're all human,
Right,
that even those we perceive as strong and successful have their own internal battles.
right. And Selman admits he was comfortable in Zaria. His ministry was thriving, he was seeing results, and the thought of uprooting everything and starting over in Abuja was terrifying.
He even shares how he prayed, saying, "Ministers will understand what I'm saying. I'm not ready for any, just keep me, let me serve you."
Huh.
He was essentially asking God to let him stay in his comfort zone.
But what's so powerful about Selman's story is that despite his fear, he ultimately chose to trust Clade and obey that inner voice, even though it meant stepping into the unknown.
And that decision, that act of courage, led him to a whole new level of impact and influence. It's a powerful reminder that our breakthroughs often lie on the other side of our fear.
Absolutely. It's when we choose courage over comfort that we unlock those new dimensions, those levels we didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
But Selman's story doesn't end there. Even after moving to Abuja and experiencing even greater success, he had to face that second test we talked about, resisting complacency.
Right. He talks about how he had to actively fight against the temptation to rest on his laurels, to become comfortable with the level he had achieved.
And this is where his prayer comes back into play, that prayer where he asks God to never let him see the full extent of his impact.
Right.
It's like a safeguard against pride, a way to stay humble and hungry for more.
It's a powerful reminder that the journey of growth is never truly over. There's always more to learn, more to achieve, more ways to grow.
I completely agree. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what are the key takeaways here? What's really sticking with you?
Well, first and foremost, it's a call to action. Selman's message reminds us that we're not passive passengers on this journey of life.
Right.
We have choices to make, and those choices determine our outcomes. And those choices, as we've discussed, are often tested in those two key areas, our courage and our ability to resist complacency.
It's about having the courage to step out of our comfort zones,
Mm.
to pursue our dreams, and to resist the temptation to settle for less than what we're capable of achieving.
And it's about recognizing that true advancement is not just about doing, it's about understanding the why behind our actions.
It's that constant questioning, that pursuit of knowledge that fuels our growth and sets us on a path of sustainable success.
It really is about taking those insights and turning them into action.
Right.
Selman even talks about how seemingly small actions like registering a company, starting that blog, or practicing your craft, even when no one's watching, can be incredibly courageous steps.
It's like he's saying, don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for permission. Just start, even if it's imperfect.
And it ties back to that courage we were talking about.
Yeah.
Sometimes those small steps are the biggest leaps of faith we can take. They're the seeds that, with consistent effort and nurturing, grow into something amazing. But it's also important to remember that setbacks are inevitable.
Right.
There will be challenges. There will be moments when we stumble.
And I think that's where Selman's emphasis on understanding why comes in. He talks about how even failure can be a valuable teacher if we're willing to look at it objectively, to analyze those missteps and extract the lessons they hold.
He actually shares a personal anecdote about how he learned from his early failures in ministry, how those experiences shaped his approach and helped him grow. It's not about dwelling on the mistakes. It's about using them as fuel for improvement.
It's like that saying, every master was once a disaster.
Right.
We learn by making mistakes and by having the courage to get back up and try again, armed with the knowledge we've gained,
Yeah.
but we don't have to do it alone.
Right.
Selman also talks about the importance of having mentors, those people who have walked the path before us and can offer guidance and support.
He even talks about how he seeks mentorship not just from those who are currently alive, but from those who have left behind a legacy of wisdom through their writings and teachings. It's like we have access to this incredible library of knowledge and experience just waiting to be explored.
It's a reminder that we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Hmm.
There are people who have faced similar challenges, who have overcome obstacles, and their stories can offer incredible insight and inspiration.
And Selman also emphasizes the importance of celebrating our successes, but doing so in a way that acknowledges the source of those successes. He talks about how after a powerful event or a significant accomplishment, he always goes back to God in prayer, recognizing that it's not about him, it's about God working through him.
That's a beautiful practice, and
Yeah.
it speaks to a level of humility that's essential for sustainable success.
Mm.
It's about recognizing that our gifts and talents are not our own. They're given to us for a purpose bigger than ourselves.
And it keeps us grounded, reminding us that we're not self-made. We all have strengths and abilities, but those abilities are amplified when we align ourselves with a higher purpose.
As we wrap up this deep dive, there's one final thought from Apostle Selman that really resonated with me.
Okay.
He says, the moment you start making it pray more than you failed, pray more than you prayed when you were failing.
That's such a powerful statement. It's a reminder that success can sometimes be more dangerous than failure. It's easy to become complacent when things are going well, to think we've got it all figured out, to let our guard down.
But Selman is saying, no, that's when we need to be even more vigilant, even more connected to our source of strength.
It's about recognizing that the higher we climb, the further we have to fall, and only by staying grounded in prayer, in that constant communication with our higher power, can we navigate those heights safely.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive, and I hope you've gleaned as many insights as I have. If this sparked any thoughts or aha moments for you, we'd love to hear about it. Share your takeaways, connect with us on social media, and let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, keep diving deep.